Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming, and we have a very special guest with us today. And I've already butchered your name 3 times, so I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Kiran Sidhu, and it's all right. It gets butchered all the time. It doesn't faze me anymore.
No, me too, but I do my best to be respectful. And so welcome to Imperfect Momming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
So can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Of course. So again, I'm Kiran Sidhu. I am actually a holistic nutritionist, and I work with moms and kids. So I help moms and kids leverage a plant-based diet to get rid of negative symptoms that are holding them back from really living life to the fullest and enjoying life to the fullest. So, just symptoms like allergies, digestive issues, chronic rashes like eczema, any kind of chronic symptoms that are always there, and they're, you don't get a diagnosis of any specific disease, but you've got these symptoms that are just always there, and they're just like a nuisance or a pesky fly that just doesn't really let you be and let you really just enjoy yourself fully. So I help moms and kids get rid of those so they can truly enjoy their lives to the fullest.
So awesome. So what is it that made you get to where you're at? Like, what was it? Is it something you were always interested in, or like, what was the catalyst?
So it wasn't something I was always interested in. I've always been interested in the health, and wellness field, but I wasn't really into nutrition. I, took a few nutrition classes during my undergrad because I thought that they looked interesting. But it wasn't really until I had my daughter that I really started digging deep into nutrition because she had a lot of gut issues. She was, just really fussy and colicky, which, we all know any mother who has had to deal with that knows that there's really no fix for that. There's no solution. You get, told different things by different people, and it's, you get some band-aid solutions. You don't really get to the root of it. And it can be really frustrating. And my daughter had GERD, so she would spit up a lot or just vomit. It wasn't even spit up, it was just plain vomit.
Yeah.
And when she started eating, it seemed to get worse. I was told that, well, once she starts eating, things will get better, because it was really hard to get her to put on weight. It was really a struggle. And I was told, okay, well, once she starts solids, that'll make a difference. It didn't. A lot of her digestive issues got worse. And so I really had to do a lot of trial and error, just a lot of digging and researching on my own to figure out what was going on with her and how to solve that problem. Because I went, to a few different doctors, and no one could really give me a solution. They just gave me band-aids and told me to just wait it out and maybe she'll just outgrow it. And so eventually I just kind of, I did as much research on my own as I could. And then I realized, you know what, this is not going to cut it. I need to go big or go home with this. So I decided to go back to school and become a nutritionist and study holistic nutrition and learn all the different ways, that I could really get to the root of her symptoms. And so I did that, and I ended up, alleviating all of her symptoms through diet. I made some dietary changes and just different supplements that I tried, and it helped to fix her issues. And then I made a career out of it and decided to start helping other kids and other moms as well. So that's, it's definitely not something that I grew up thinking, oh, I'm going to grow up and be a nutritionist. It never crossed my mind. If you had told my 10-year-old self or my 16-year-old self that this is what I would be doing, I would be shocked, because I had zero interest in it at the time. But now it's my passion, it's my drive, it's what gets me up every morning, because I just love just teaching other people about nutrition. I love spreading, the message and awareness and just letting other moms know, because I wish someone had really given me that message before I had my daughter, or at least when she was a baby, when I was first dealing with all of these issues. If someone could have just told me there is hope, there is a way to stop all of this before it turns into something worse or something bigger, that would have made me feel so much better.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you're suffering, and it's like you
Yes.
said, they're just giving you band-aids, and it's funny how our kids can course correct us, like
Yes.
we're on a whole different path, and then we have a kid, and then course correction
Yes.
happens.
It's, I remember someone telling me that when I had my daughter, I remember someone telling me that when you have a child, the mother is also reborn. You're also reborn. And I feel that so deeply, because I really felt like, a whole new life started for me. It was a difficult and challenging journey, but it's also a very rewarding journey. And I've got, the career that I I've never had a passion for anything like this before. So, if it weren't for the struggles that, my daughter and I went through, I wouldn't have had this career and I wouldn't have gone down this path. So I really do believe that everything happens for a reason. And yeah, I ended up just really finding my purpose through all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, my son has had eczema on and off throughout his life, and we the first time it showed up was when I switched to a new laundry detergent, and I had used one from a company called Melaleuca that uses all
Mhm.
natural products and whatnot. I'm sure you're familiar with
Yes.
them. And so we'd been using those products since before I even conceived, because there was this infamous story in our family where my brother drank a bottle of bleach, or drank some bleach, and ended up in the hospital for a couple of days.
Oh, goodness.
It turned out that it was actually paint thinner, but that story, and he's fine. But that story,
I figured that much because
right,
yeah,
because there
I
was
could
no
see just by your
heaviness with
expression.
it,
Yes.
right? Yeah, so, but that story really, when I was introduced to this product and I was trying to get pregnant at that time, I was like, well, I don't want to have any toxic cleaning supplies in my house. And so I switched everything over to Melaleuca products, and I still use them today, because when I use other things, he breaks out into an eczema rash.
Yes.
And so he'll remind me too now, because he's heard that story so many times. He's like, I'll ask him, do you want me to wash this first, or do you want to just wear it or sleep in it? And he goes, no, Mom, I need you to wash it first.
Yes, because now he knows
Yeah, he knows.
he doesn't want to feel that way. He knows the difference between, feeling good and not having itchy skin,
Right.
and having itchy skin because of, his clothes not being washed in the right detergent for him.
Right. And the part of the reason I brought that up is because going to the dermatologist, that's my experience, is he also had something called water warts, which is a virus that's related to the pox virus, right?
Yes.
So you only get it once, but it could be all these little white blisters all over, or clear blisters, and they're full of water. And there's usually it goes away within 6 months, but I'm positive he had it for over a year. And so we did some treatment.
Wow.
Yeah, we did some treatment, which he didn't appreciate very much. But they went away. And then I noticed the rash on his arm. And so I brought him back to the dermatologist, and I was like, is it coming back? And she said, oh no, that's just eczema. And that was it. And it's like, what do you mean that's just eczema? Like, isn't there something that we could do for eczema? And he still has that. Is there like a universal cure for eczema, or is it individualized for different people?
So it is individualized, but there are some universal kind of generic or general guidelines. So eczema, especially chronic eczema, it's usually linked to the gut. So it's a sign that there are some issues going on with his gut. There's some dysbiosis, maybe some, some hyperpermeability, or AKA leaky gut. Yeah. So, and some low grade inflammation going on as well.
Yeah.
So that's usually there, but then, depending on the person, it could be there for different reasons.
Yeah. And I've kind of self-diagnosed him that, when it gets bad, it gets worse in the summertime, typically when he's not wearing as much clothes and he'll lean on somebody's couch. And so
Oh,
it's like, it's in the elbow area. And,
yes.
so I've kind of linked it to that. I don't think it's bad right now. We're recording this.
There anymore.
He says it's not there anymore. So
Yeah. If he's got really sensitive skin, then it could just be his skin touching certain things and getting that chemical exposure, because everything does, like you mentioned, furniture, everything does off gas,
Yeah.
Or leave some sort of a residue that some kids are just more sensitive to than others.
Yeah. What would you say to a mom that is, somewhat interested in what you do, but she's just like right on the fence? Like what would you say to scare her to push her over onto your side of the fence?
Well, I don't want to scare. I never want to fear monger.
Yeah.
But, the one thing that I would say is that your kids are only little for so long, and you really have this prime window when they're young. It's so much easier to kind of nip these little issues in the bud when they're young, instead of waiting until they fester and grow and turn into a much bigger illness or disease or some other diagnosis when they're older. It's much harder to reverse that versus just nipping these small little issues in the bud, right? These symptoms that we see in kids and, adults too, but they generally show up in childhood. And so many kids, I'd say the majority of kids these days have some sort of, symptom. And they're really our bodies, they're warning signs. Our body is sending off these signals. Your children's bodies are giving you these signals, these warning signals that something's wrong, something's out of balance, something isn't sitting right with us. And we need you to pay attention now before it turns into something bigger.
Right.
So that's what I always say to moms. I know they're so busy and it's hard to juggle everything, and then adding something else on top of that, trying to change their diet and, work with a nutritionist to figure out what to feed them or how to, get to the root of whatever these symptoms are that they may have. But, you really have to think long term, and you really just have to prioritize and make space for the things that are really going to matter in the long run.
And I've heard I've been around holistic type people most of my adult life. I think I was certified as a massage therapist when I was 20, maybe 21. And so I've been in the holistic health arena for quite a while, almost half my life. And oh man, that hurt my heart so much to say that. I just turned 39 a month ago, so or this month rather. I'm still.
Embrace it. I say embrace it. Embrace it. You are wiser, and I always say with age, it's embrace it, because I would not want to go back to being, the 20-year-old me, because she was really naive and ignorant about a lot of things.
I'd like to go back to her, and if I could tell her stuff.
Yes. It doesn't work that way.
Because then, I might not be where I'm at. Like that's that's absolutely part of the path. But yeah, so I've been around these holistic people for, 20 years or so. And when I remember one person, I don't remember who or when or where or how that I heard about it, but it's your body's first line of defense. So I think we were talking about when people get their tonsils taken out and when people get their gallbladder taken out, and then they get their, what's the other one they get taken out? Their
appendix.
Appendix, thank you. When you get all of these things taken out, that it's actually, these are your body's first line of defense. And there's something going on that's creating that happening.
Yes.
And it's probably
definitely
food. is
Yes.
one of the things.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
food, it's environmental exposures, it's, a slew of issues. It's lifestyle. Some people are, not really prioritizing their sleep. Some people are just exposed to way too many, harmful chemicals out there. Everything's full of chemicals, even natural and good things are full of chemicals, but there's good chemicals and bad chemicals. And so, we're just exposed to so much more of that. And, people just aren't sleeping, our stress levels are much higher. Stress has a very, very strong impact on the body. It can really wreak havoc with the hormones and even with gut health and, really just do a number on people. And so there's so many different factors, and food is really, at the core of it as well, because we're just not eating the way that we're meant to. We're eating so many processed foods. That's just the way that society is now. It's so easy. And that's what grocery stores are full of. Most of their aisles are full of processed and packaged foods, unfortunately. So, we've just, as a society, we've kind of created this and, this perfect storm to have all of these health issues. And so it's really up to individuals to take their own health into their hands, and for moms to really take their kids' health into their hands and start teaching them from a really young age about, food and what food is meant for, what the purpose of food is, that it's meant to fuel our bodies and nourish our bodies, and it's nourishing their growing bodies, and how different foods do that in different ways. Because, most kids these days, unfortunately, grow up on these, the SAD diet, the standard American diet, that's not nourishing. And that's why we're seeing things like we're seeing, signs of heart disease, early signs of heart disease in kids as young as 11 years old. So there are 11-year-olds who have been found to have, plaque buildup in their arteries, which is just heartbreaking, because at 11, they're already set up basically to have disease later when they're adults. And it's really sad, because it's like they never had a chance.
Yeah.
They weren't given that chance.
Something that stood out to me in a mom group recently was that her 9-year-old started her period, and she's like, did anybody else's 9-year-old start their period? And several moms commented that they started at 9, and it's like, that's really young.
It is. And precocious puberty is a big problem these days. And because a lot of it has to do with the hormones that we're pumping into our kids through. One, they're getting it through food, because our, the standard American diet is so heavy in animal products, which are full of hormones. And so, these young children are getting exposed to all of these hormones through their food. And then we're also getting it through other avenues as well. So, plastics, they're heating our food in plastics, they're storing food in plastics, and some of those chemicals will leach into the food. And unfortunately, that will also wreak havoc with the hormones. It'll mimic certain hormones, and then just other chemical exposures. And, there's so many ways that just, food and the environment is playing a role in changing, the hormones of children. And unfortunately, it's, we're seeing that earlier and earlier, and it's not a good sign. We don't want precocious puberty to become the norm, but it slowly is, unfortunately. So we really need to, and I feel like moms really have the power to change that.
Yeah. I know that everybody, thinks that the Kardashians are, airhead family or whatever. That's not my opinion. I like to watch the show. But it's like, Kourtney Kardashian is really kind of driving this this movement towards educating moms and forcing the FDA to tell moms what is in their products and revamping their products. I haven't done like a whole lot of research on it. I saw it on an episode, but it's like, that seems like, I do watch them. I'm half Armenian. I have to.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I gotta support. But I think she's just brought that information to light to me, because I was very intuitive as a mom, but I did things that worked for me and not necessarily that were the best. And so I did cloth diapers when I was at home, because I did work from home a lot. But if I was out and about, I was doing, throw away disposable diapers. I know words and I use words and they come out.
It happens to the best of us. I remember the one I used to flub that I used to always think, especially when my daughter was younger. For some reason, I don't know why, instead of saying diapers and wipes, if I was talking to somebody and it's talking fast, especially, I would say wipers and dipes.
Yeah, I heard that
my
in
brain
head.
for some reason just would keep on doing that. And I couldn't stop myself from saying it out loud. And yeah, all of our brains do that.
And it's been, 8+ years since I've had to think about diapers and wipes, and so couldn't remember what they were called. But I did stuff like that, and then and as when things really changed when I went through a divorce, it was like I was home more with him. I was really focused on getting him to try different things and healthy things and all of that. And then when I went through the divorce, I've openly talked about I was in a really deep depression, and so it ended up being corn dogs and chicken nuggets, and now he doesn't like certain things, and like he used to eat corn and peas that cooked, and now he won't eat corn and he won't eat peas, and he doesn't like any cooked vegetables at all. So it's and I was doing the best I could at the time, and for a while it was like, I will fight this battle, because then he started to fight me on what he wanted to eat. It's like, I will fight this battle when he is older, because it'll be easier to reason with a child when they're older. No, it wasn't. Don't make learn from my mistake. We went to the grocery store yesterday and we're thinking about what can we send him to school with, because he doesn't like school lunch, and I would rather him eat something from home anyway. But it's like, what can you take to school that's protein, but also that you can enjoy cold? Because it's a cold lunch, it's not a hot lunch.
No.
So I've been reaching out my feelers for like, who has ideas?
Yes. And that's why I love like all the different mom groups out there now. There are so many great ideas that we can get. That community is so important to get that support and get those ideas from other moms who've been there, and just, who can bounce ideas off of each other. But yeah, school lunches are definitely a challenge, especially with more and more schools becoming nut free. It definitely becomes a challenge, because there's so many kids who, they literally will not eat anything except PB&J. And so what do you send to school with a kid who will only eat PB&J when peanut butter is not allowed? And so that's when you have to do a lot of you have to get creative. You have to find other types of nut butter or seed butters, and then getting kids, because some kids are so particular and picky with their tastes that they won't want to try another one. So then it's really about preparing in advance. If you know that's going to be an issue, then you need to start early and really start small. So you start with mixing just a little bit of, say, sunflower seed or pumpkin seed butter in with your peanut butter, just a little bit. And you slowly get them used to that. And you slowly transition until, you add more and more of the other butter until it's mostly, there's no peanut butter left in there. Because with kids who are picky, especially kids who've already developed taste, like you said, it's so much easier when they're younger, because when they get older, they're just that much more stubborn. They're just that much more set in their ways. So for kids who have already established those habits and they're already, just very addicted, or just, very set on certain foods, you really have to take that, slow and steady approach and just be persistent. So many moms that I talk to, they try to make changes, but they give up too soon. And so it's really about being persistent and continuing on and really just persevering. Because I can promise you this, consistency pays off with kids. It doesn't matter what age, even when they're older, even when they've already established certain habits, it will still pay off. You just have to stick with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've noticed that, I was a giver upper in the past, and luckily my boyfriend is like really wanting to get him to try different foods, and so he's a little more strict and more consistent than I am, which is great that we complement each other that
Yes.
way. So is there a piece of advice that you want to give to our listeners?
So I would say to all the moms listening that, no matter what your child is dealing with now from a health perspective, you need to let go of the past and what you could have done differently, what you should have done differently. I have been there, when I found out, when I actually went back to nutrition school and I learned all about gut health and all of these different things, I had so much mom guilt. I kept thinking, oh my goodness, if I'd only read some of these books when I was pregnant, or if I'd only come across this information or did more research, I could have saved her from all of these challenges that she had.
If I was interested when I was 10 years old, I could have saved her.
But it's just, it's insanity, right? You can't, there's no way to predict these things. And you do the best you can with the knowledge you have at that time, at any given time. No one wants their child to struggle with any issues. No one wants their child to not be healthy. No one wants their child to have eczema or to have allergies or to have food sensitivities or GERD or asthma or whatever it may be. But, when it happens, there's no point in looking back and saying, oh, shoulda, woulda, coulda, I'm a horrible mother. I didn't do this right. That will not serve your child. Looking back will not help your child. It won't change anything. And having that stress and that burden placed on yourself is only going to make it harder for you to be a fully present mother and to be the best version of yourself for your child. So I really want to just stress that it's really important to look forward and not backward, and not get in that rut of wallowing in guilt of, oh my goodness, I could have done this better, or I should have done this, and feeling guilty and then worrying about what you did wrong in the past and how that may impact your child in the future. Instead of worrying, worry will not do anything for your child.
Right.
Worrying will not make your child's issues go away. Right. You really need to take action and do something moving forward and focus on the future and focus on actually taking action and making changes going forward with the knowledge that you have now, because you didn't have that knowledge before, but whatever knowledge you gain, you do better. When you know better, you do better.
Right.
And so you just keep going, keep putting one foot in front of the other, keep making changes with, the knowledge that you acquire. And if you need help, reach out and get help. It's okay to get help. That's another thing that us moms do all the time. We think we have to do it all, and it really does take a village. And so it's okay to reach out for help and, ask for advice from people.
Yeah. If I had asked someone to sum up the book that I wrote about mom guilt, it would have been exactly what you just said over the last minute and a half. Like, it's so much that of wishing that we had done differently when we didn't know differently.
Yeah.
That we would have, like, that's what creates so much guilt. And I don't think that I've talked about this on the podcast, that really guilt is just a notification. And it's a notification to let you know that what you are doing or what you've done is out of alignment with your values, with your good mom rule, right? And so sometimes we can change the behavior, we can do better, but we can't change the past. And so we have to reframe the past, and we have to change the way that we see and remind ourselves things like we're doing the best that we can with the tools that we have at the time. Yes. And because 100% every mom who knows better does better.
Yes.
There's not a single mom out there that's like, I know that this is a really good thing to do, but screw my kid, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Except when maybe we're tired a little bit.
Yes, I was going to say there are those times where, and I don't want to shame moms or make them feel guilty for that, because we all have that. I have those moments too, where you're just too tired, especially when it comes to things like food or dinner, when you know what, it's better for my child to have a healthy home cooked meal from scratch, but I'm just too damn tired today. So I'm going to take something out of the freezer and just heat it up, because that's just what works today. And that's okay. It's okay to do that sometimes. Yeah. But if you find that that's something you're doing day in and day out, that's when you know that something needs to change, and you need to, you need to find a way to either get support in other ways to help you, or to just, reprioritize, or just find some way to make those changes, because, you it's okay to have those moments, as long as those moments don't become your daily routine.
Right. Absolutely. I agree 100%. Is there a book that you want to recommend for our moms?
Yes, I do have a book. So there is a book called A Parent's Guide to Intuitive Eating by Dr. Yami. I love that book because it's a book I wish I had read when my daughter was younger and I was going crazy trying to make her eat. And she was underweight, and I wanted her to eat the foods that I wanted her to eat. And, with all the training that I've had now and all the education, I know that that wasn't the way to go. And so, if you really want to raise healthy eaters and kids who are intuitive eaters and they know how to listen to their bodies and listen to their body signals to know when they're full or when they're hungry, or really to understand what their bodies need at that time, instead of just grabbing whatever is in sight and stuffing their faces with it, this book is really helpful. It really helps to give parents the tools to learn how to raise intuitive eaters. And intuitive eating is definitely something that is lost in today's society. We don't know how to listen to our own body cues anymore. We don't eat to fuel our bodies anymore. We eat for many other reasons. We eat for pleasure. We eat, to stuff our emotions. We eat for many other reasons, but we don't really truly understand why we need to eat and what our bodies get from it. But if we really teach kids young to pay attention to their own body cues, that's a skill that will last them a very, very long time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing that I was focusing on for a while is, my emotional eating. And I had a coach ask me that if I was able to stop the emotional eating, would that solve my problem? And we were in a practice coach situation, and she was practicing by asking that question. She's like, well, yeah, of course it would solve the problem. And I was like, no, it actually wouldn't solve the problem, because the problem isn't that I emotionally eat. The problem is that I was afraid of my emotions and I was trying to avoid them. And so that little question seems so simple, and it seems counterintuitive. It's like, well, of course, if the problem stops, that would solve the problem. And it's like, no, because it's actually not the problem. It's a solution to the problem.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just the surface. That's what you see, but the problem has many layers.
And
below.
That goes into like what we've been talking about is like eczema is not a problem. It's a symptom of the problem.
Yes.
And so when we ignore these symptoms and we just put lotion on it, or we just put steroids on it, which are both of the things that I was told to do, it's masking a symptom.
Yes.
If you have a headache, you don't just take an aspirin, like drink a glass of water and see if the headache goes away. And if you're having frequent headaches, then we need to talk to somebody, probably not a typical doctor, because they'll just say, take some aspirin.
Yes. Yes. And that's so true. People really need to understand that these symptoms that we see, what we're actually able to see is really just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many layers underneath that we need to unpack. And we need to really get to the root of those, because that surface layer that we can see, that's not, that's really not the problem. Like you said, that's just a symptom of the problem.
And if you can't understand why I get so geeked out on these conversations, then you wouldn't be listening, 6 months into the podcast, but I get so geeked out on these conversations. But I thank you so much for everything that you've added to my community and to the podcast listeners. And
you're so welcome. And thank you for having me. I would like to just let your listeners know, I actually run a workshop every once in a while that I am running in about a month on September 18th. So if anybody wants to join that, I will be talking about children's nutrition and really about those, those superficial symptoms that we see and what you need to do to get at the root cause instead of just addressing those top layers of it. So I invite everyone to come and join me for that if you do have kids who are dealing with any of these, symptoms that we discussed.
Yeah. And then where can they find you?
So they can find me on Instagram at my handle is Key to Health NC. That's my Instagram handle. They can also find me on Facebook. So I run a Facebook group called the Raising Healthy Plant Powered Kids Facebook group. So you can just search for that in Facebook and find me there as well.
Awesome. And how often do you do that program, just in case we don't release before September?
Oh. So I run that a few times. So I'll be running it in September, and then I will also run it again in November. So about every 2 or 3 months I run it. But if you're in the Facebook group, or if you sign up for my newsletter, which you can do through, I can leave a link, or you can also just look it up on my Instagram. If you go to the link in my Instagram, it'll take you to that. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you'll get notifications for those as well.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you. And I really do hope that this has helped at least one person, but hundreds of people would be amazing, just to change the world and change the way that we eat and get out of the cycle of disease, medicine, and younger kids getting, that floored me. The plaque around the arteries is just crazy. Yeah.
It's unfortunate. It's something we need to change. So we need to really take action and empower ourselves with that knowledge and those tools to change that. You can change the trajectory of your child's health. Yeah. You have the power to do that, especially when they're young. This is such a prime window of, it's just a very opportune time to really set them up for great health, leading into the future. Because a lot of these illnesses we see in adults, they didn't start in adulthood. They started in childhood, but they didn't really, grow into some full-blown disease until they were adults, because all of those symptoms of the problem kept getting ignored, and they kept getting ignored until they just couldn't be ignored any longer.
Yeah. The Body Speaks. I think that was another book that somebody recommended.
Yes. Oh, there's the, I just thought of another one. The Body Keeps the Score. I can't remember the author for it now, but The Body Keeps the Score is also a great book. Yes.
So awesome. Well, we'll have another episode of Imperfect Momming for you next week. And until then, keep healing. Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AliciaLyons.com. That's ALYSIALYONS.com. See you next time.